All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for the Thursday, March 25th, 2021 District Administrative Meeting, Meet and Confer Negotiations. This meeting is being recorded via Zoom, and we will be posting it on the district YouTube channel at the conclusion of the meeting, and it will be there as of tomorrow morning, Friday, March 26th. So I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. The next item that we typically look at on the agenda are the norms. I believe that we have really established our norms and do not need to discuss that. But if there's anyone that would like to discuss a norm, we can certainly do that at this point. All right, there's no discussion or questions, so we'll move on to item 3, approval of the minutes from February 18th, 2021. Before we approve those minutes, I would just like to thank everyone for the flexibility, as we did have to move Meet and Confer around based on some special governing board meetings. And we will have another meeting, which we will also announce later in the agenda, but there is going to be another meeting on Thursday, April 1st. So today may just be mostly discussion and questions and putting some notes on proposals. We are joined this evening by Mr. Jeff Stratman, who assists the district with legal matters to answer any questions we may have that come up on different proposals, either new proposals or pending proposals. So I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes from February 18th, 2021.
I second.
Thank you, Michela, for seconding the motion. Is there any discussion or question about those minutes? All right, so if everyone is able to approve the minutes, just, I guess it's a Zoom vote. So is there anyone that is opposed to approving the minutes from February 18th? All right, perfect. Sounds great. Thank you all. The next thing we'll move into is Cea New Proposals. I know that there were some carried over from the last when we had to move the meeting. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Ms. Stevens.
All right, I'm going to call on Alex, if Alex can get us started.
Hi, just give me 1 second. So trying to find my memo. Okay, so we have one new proposal we'd like to submit, and it's the CEA proposed memorandum of understanding for the ESP step salary schedule. Pretty much it's just we'd like to include, start a committee including 3 CEA representatives or designees and 3 ESPs that are not involved with CEA, as well as 3 district office personnel to work collaboratively to move forward with a new salary step schedule for ESPs that will benefit all of us. Pretty much, we'd like to get started on this committee by May 2021 and conclude this by January 2022. That's pretty much our proposal that we will be submitting for this one. Any questions?
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. Ms. Farrar, do you want to talk about what we were looking at with the ESP pay going into 21-22?
Sure. Based on the analysis that I did on market wages, it was actually more advantageous to keep the existing schedule because it has 26 steps. And a lot of the positions like administrative, when you talk about administrative classroom aides, they maxed out at year 10. So that was problematic because you would have, you would have a few that would benefit, but not greatly benefit, but then you'd have a lot that would lose. And that is certainly not the direction that we were trying to go. So I did an analysis to compare if we kept the columns as they are, but gave everybody their years, that was the most beneficial to ESPs. So if I understand your proposal correctly, because I'm reading it, if I understand your proposal correctly, you're just wanting to update the names or the types, the job titles, the official job titles that we use for record keeping purposes. So that, but not necessarily go to market study, because I will tell you from what I looked at, that's not going to make anybody happy.
Okay, I think that's a different proposal that for the job description. This is more of a step salary schedule that we're proposing to start a committee to form a step salary schedule.
Right, but the two items are hand in hand. You can't do one without the other.
Gotcha. Okay, will district be presenting a proposal for this step salary?
Yes, we will. I'm planning on taking that to the April 22nd board meeting.
Okay. I think Michela has a question.
I have two quick questions. One is the proposal that's going to be presented. Is what we have now a placement or for?
Well, it's been treated as a placement schedule, but it's actually a step schedule. When you look at it, it's got 26 rows, and every column maxes out of 26.
Okay. So will like our certified schedule, will the ESP have a chance for movement?
If they change jobs, yes. Now that would be where some of the discussion with the committee next year, I think, would take place. You know, do we expand the number of columns that we have based on analysis on the actual job descriptions, where they would fall? But it's not a traditional like teacher schedule where you get more education, you get more money. That's already written on the placement or the step schedule. As you know, 50 cents if you have an associate's degree and 50 cents and $1 if you have a bachelor's degree. So that's already on there. So it's not a, you don't move across the columns in the same way that a teacher or a certified would.
And then, sorry, I'm just gonna take all these. When you said, I know we don't have the proposal as yet, before the 22nd, correct? Like, well, okay. Everyone's nodding. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that it's really, as Victoria said, a reactivation of the steps. They're already there. And then it would also be looking at do we have the financial ability to add a percentage to each of those positions. And what I mean by that is, if you look at A12, and I think the starting is like $12.57 an hour. And adding a percentage to that, so that way, not only are people coming in at higher pay, but then individuals that are being moved to their years of experience in their position would also be getting that increase and the years. So that's where we're headed with it. So I think, I mean,
and I built a 5% in.
right.
So every column went up, but every cell went up by 5%, and then I gave everybody the years. So that's what I built in.
So I think that goes along with what you were looking for, Alex, with the description of your proposal as far as looking at it. But I think we'll be able to present something that kind of meets all of that.
Got it. And so I just have a couple clarifying questions. So one, every year, every employee will be moving to the next step on the schedule, correct?
Correct.
Is that including a 5% every year, or is it just for this first, as we indoctrinate it? Well,
it will have to change accordingly based on the mandatory increase in minimum wage. So every time that goes up, the whole schedule would have to increase accordingly. So it's not static in that sense.
Got it. I like to hear that. Okay, so that concludes my questions for your counter, technically.
Yeah. Thank you. Michela, did you have a question?
Maybe not. I think I'm having an understanding. So I'm now going to turn off my camera.
Okay. All right. So no worries. And then did you have any other new proposals that you want? I mean, we kind of both had a similar new proposal. So
Nothing new similar to this topic, but I will go ahead and pass it to Michelle.
sounds good.
All right. So we did have a proposal, and it's apologize because it's a longer title. It's again a memo of understanding for ourselves, our social workers, our school counselors, and our RTIB professionals to create a step salary schedule for them. Basically, they do require special licenses and requirements specialized to their area expertise, and they don't have a schedule that's reflective of that. So we are just hoping to create something that does reflect their expertise and everything that they bring with their knowledge to our district.
I missed the first part of your statement. Which classification are you talking about? I was taking notes.
This would be the cells, the social workers, school counselors, and RTIB professionals.
So your proposal is to request basically a different certified step schedule.
Yes, to reflect their areas of expertise and their levels of licenses and requirements that they have for their jobs. It's different than what a teacher would have. So we just want to make sure that they are they're accurately represented as far as, you know, a step salary schedule would have them placed.
All right, well, thank you for the proposal. We'll certainly take a look at it. The one thing I would just point out, I mean, it's not really anything to discuss right now, but an RTIB has no additional requirements other than a teaching certificate. So I don't know how that they would fall into that, but we will definitely take a look at it and come back with.
So a few of the RTIBs are actually BCBA qualified, and so that's a completely different board. So they do have like additional licensing. So the job description may just say teaching certificate or counseling or things like that, but some of them actually have higher qualifications.
Right, no, I understand that piece, but we can't raise the pay of a job because some people have an extra certification. What we may need to look at is possibly a stipend or something similar that we do for psychologists, because you know, we have even a third grade teacher may have 3 master's degrees and they're compensated based on the teacher salary schedule on that education. So we'll take a look at it, and I do appreciate the information.
Maybe this is also a good opportunity then for us to collectively explore the job description for an RTIB.
That's really more of a administrative decision and taking it through the governing board than it is meet and confer. Job descriptions are not really a meet and confer item. But we'll, like I said, we'll look at it and you know, we have a meeting next Thursday to continue the discussion. So thank you. Did you have other new proposals, Ms. Stevens?
We do, and I will pass it on to Cea for our next one.
Hello. So we have a proposal for I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it. I'm gonna phone a friend. Magella, I forget which doc you're looking for. I think I'm lost.
All right, I just dropped it into chat for you. If that
Thank you.
works.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Yes, okay. So CA is also proposing a salary for the speech language pathologists. And this would be a step salary schedule. So we included in our rationale and calculations that the salary schedule would be reviewed every 2 years. In addition, the ESP committee will need to review all ESP salaries, including the lane for the speech and language pathologist assistants, because currently they are on the ESP salary schedule. So the reason why we want to go through with this is because Cartwright has struggled and continues to have difficulty to fully staff the speech language pathology assistant positions with high quality district employees, which results in haphazard services for our Cartwright scholars and from a revolving door of employees and district employees to have to take on additional duties to help cover these unfilled positions. So it becomes a strain on our system overall. And this impairs the SLPA's ability to appropriately serve the scholars at their assigned school. So these district employees provide a consistency for scholars, and they build lasting relationships with the school staffs and families. And they will do the work until it's done, like not when contract hours end. So you have very dedicated individuals who are very dedicated to their work, and they're dedicated to their students and their schools. Right now, the salary schedule isn't as attractive to newcomers. It's not as competitive in terms of what else is out there in other districts that compare with our student population. So this also helps to retain those quality employees, and this results in an ability to deepen the relationships that the SLPAs have with their school and the stakeholders there. Lastly, the SLPAs were excluded from the Red for Ed raise. And that was pretty disheartening to the SLPAs who also supported the Red for Ed initiative. And so they felt unseen and unvalued due to that lapse. Are there any questions about this proposal?
I guess my one question, we're looking at, you said B24. Those numbers would be completely askew with like B23, because that's a very large increase. It's almost 10%. Might even be higher than that actually. So I guess that was just my only, I guess, point is as we're looking through the salary schedule with what Ms. Farrar had already stated, this may be, they are ESPs, so it would be encompassed in that increase. And I know I see Victoria's on the video, so I'll let her talk about her question or point as well.
So just so I understand, right now, I guess I don't understand the reason why they aren't on the other schedule and why they're on the B24. Are they hourly? I mean, I would assume they're hourly.
Yes, they're currently hourly.
So I guess, okay, so I'm thinking this through. If we wanted to keep them on the ESP schedule, but we wouldn't, that job for SLPAs is really different than what And I understand what you're saying. So basically what you're saying is, well, let's make a B25 for them.
Yes.
Okay, just so I get it clear in my head, because I'm not quite sure why they're on that schedule. So, okay, so now I've got a place to start. All right, thank you.
All right.
Oops, sorry. Any other questions?
No, I don't see any. I think we're good. Do you have an additional new proposals?
One more. Apparently we're all a little tired because computers. Okay, I'm here. All right, our final one for this evening is the CEA proposed Prop 208 contingency plan. The dispersal plan falls in line with the will of the Arizona voters who passed Prop 208, woo, and all the hard work that went into that. And beneath the rationale, you'll see that we just included the borrowed definitions from the proposition. And within the proposal, with discussing the dispersal of funds, we would also like the meet and confer teams to reconvene after the initial disbursement to determine how the additional monies will be distributed, and for Prop 208 funds to be included in the annual financial report.
Thank you, Michelle. And I know that one of the reasons that we invited Mr. Stratman here this evening was to talk about this particular issue being Prop 208 disbursement funding, et cetera. So Jeff, if you are there, would you mind sharing your input on that, or Victoria?
I can let Jeff go first and then I'll pipe in afterward.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, sorry, took me a minute to get unmuted there. So some of the difficulty with the Prop 208 stuff is not knowing for sure yet. I'm running into this in several districts I represent. Not knowing for sure yet what those funds are exactly going to look like, what those amounts are. And if you're seeing any of the news publicity on it, which there's been a lot, there are still some potential legal hangups with that, where we're really kind of uncertain still what kind of money is actually going to be in hand and when it's going to be in hand at each district. So it's really difficult to dive into some of those it's a bit premature to dive into some of those details as to where we stand with that legally right now. Just because it's really difficult for somebody in Victoria's position to say, I'm going to have X amount of dollars that I anticipate. Those kind of things generally come out, just like with the ESSER funds. You'll see stuff from the Arizona school business officials and so forth that start to project those funds when the time is right to do that. And we're just not there yet. So it's really hard to start to talk about the details of what, even though it is the season for talking about salary schedules and so forth for the upcoming year, it's really difficult right now to include those particular monies because it's still up in the air what type of exact amount of money each district is going to have from that fund.
Oops, wrong buttons. Of course, and from what we were understanding, as Prop 208 is going in and out of litigation, monies are trickling in, or they are supposed to be trickling in by the summer. And so this is just a plan to, as I'm imagining it pouring in, but as money is coming in, that there is a place for it to go. So from what I'm understanding as well, with working with other districts on the same subject, is respecting what the voters decided on and respecting where they would like, how we would like the funds dispersed. And I do know that it definitely won't be the same every year, of course, and also waiting to see what happens as we wait.
Okay, this is Victoria. The way it was approved, there are already the specifics on how that money is spent. So that's not up to district decision, pretty much, because there's sort of 10% for teacher retention. You've got the categories that you have to spend it on. One of my biggest reservations with this proposal is, like Mr. Stratman said, first of all, we don't know the amount. The legislature is currently working through some legislative bills to limit the impacts. They're trying to provide additional exemptions to keep people from having to pay this tax. So the initial estimates are not going to be our final numbers. Second, there's also a provision in this proposal, I believe, is financially irresponsible, which is any M&O carry forward above 4% is subject to CEA review and allocation. That's very dangerous. At least that's what I see on the contingency plan. General budget carry forward exceeds 4%. That is a very, very bad practice to not let the board have the decision on what the priorities are. Because that's a board and administrative decision on any M&O carry forward, any 610 carry forward. I can tell you right now that if it were not for our ESSER funds, ESSER 1, 2, and 3, we would be laying off people left and right. And 4 weeks ago, I didn't even know there was going to be an ESSER 3. ESSER 3 is going to be a significant help. It's going to help us pay for the raises that we're wanting to give to ESPs, because if it weren't for that, if it weren't for ESSER 2, that just wouldn't happen. You can cut, unless we cut staff and cut enough to make the raises possible for everybody that's left. So the district has an obligation to manage the budget. That is the district function. That's a board function. And I just believe that would be irresponsible to involve another party in that doesn't have the legal authority to make those decisions.
I just want to be clear, are you talking about the line of after the initial disbursement?
It says, furthermore, I got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm on the 5th paragraph. Furthermore, if the general budget carry forward exceeds 4% of the expenditure budget, the excess amount shall be used to pay all non-admin staff a flat stipend evenly distributed among all non-admin employees, which shall be paid no later than August.
Okay, just want to make sure we understand that wasn't so much a CEA, but basically all the paragraphs above it are straight from the proposal or from the proposition. So we haven't, we know it's already decided. It's literally a cut and paste from how the proposition was written in the disbursement of funds.
No, that makes sense for the paragraphs above. And I see below that it mentions a financial report. The Auditor General's office will prescribe exactly what that report has to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that in itself is not subject to district control. The state will tell us what we have to report and when and where and how and why. Mm-hmm. So that's not something that even the board has control of. And that's, similar to what you have with your title grants, what you have with results-based funding. The state tells you what you need to report now. So those things will be specified and that will be obviously given because we're required to report financially. It's just that they tell us the how.
Okay.
Michelle, and I apologize. Tom tried to share with me the proposals, but I didn't get those through the Google Drive. So I don't have it in front of me. Are you saying that basically the proposal that's there, putting aside the language that Victoria just spoke about with the carry forward, the rest of it is just copied and pasted from Prop 208 language that talks about those classifications of, you use certain percentage here, a certain percentage there?
Yes.
And I guess what I would say to that, a couple of things, for both parties. One is, if that's exactly what it does as a district administrator, it's just duplication of what the current status of the law is for now. My comeback to that also, as to you guys as the CEA, why put it in a proposal? Because it's just duplication of the law. The district has to abide by the law if that remains what the law is. So if you're just restating what those classifications are without any amounts or anything other than the percentage, no specific dollar amounts, personally, legally, it's kind of frivolous, because the district has to abide by whatever that statutory legislative law is in that proposition. Does that make sense?
Of course it does. And
Yeah.
the contingency plan is basically that of a contingency plan where as we work with CEA, works with AEA, which worked pretty hard on this proposition to begin with, is making sure that the funds go where they're supposed to go. So is it replication? Of course, but having it out there, having it in writing of, hey, if we get bojillion dollars, how it's going to be dispersed, and if we get $5, how it's going to be dispersed. So making sure we know where it's going.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeff, for your input there, and thanks, Michello, for explaining kind of where you're coming from with that. So we'll obviously keep that, as part of the pending section for our next meeting, and just look at that. I understand it just being a replication and wanting it kind of out there. So when it goes, I understand where you're coming from with that. And so we can continue to look at that. Was that your final new proposal? Okay, thank you.
It
was. The new proposal that we were going to discuss from the district or board team was already discussed. We talked about bringing forward a ESP updated salary schedule with the 5%, putting people on their steps. So at the next meeting or the meeting after that, most likely the next meeting, because it'll be prior to the April 8th board meeting, Ms. Farrar will kind of present where we're at with that, so you can take a look at it and see what that actually transpires into from what we talked about. So that was the new one we have. So any questions about that? All right, thank you. So we'll go ahead and move on to our pending proposals. And as I said earlier, we're kind of just regrouping here based on a little bit of a delay because of some other obligations that we all had, based on executive orders and things coming into play that took our time away from me and Confer. So I am going to go through these the pending proposals, and if anyone has any specific questions or comments they would like to make, please put your video on. But again, we'll get into that decision phase at the next meeting if everyone is okay with that. Obviously, I don't want to make the decision for everyone or both teams because that's not my role. But I think that's probably the most prudent thing to do, just with everything else we've been dealing with and making sure that we, make informed decisions. So again, if anyone has any questions, I'll just go through these. Go ahead and put your video on, and then you'll be recognized to speak if you do have a question or comment. So the first one is the CEA proposed change to the job classifications for ESPs, which was a proposal or is a proposal that has specific labels and names. And I know that Victoria has been working extremely hard throughout the year to do that as well. So I don't know if Victoria, you have anything to add right now, or if you'd prefer to get into the detail on the 1st of April with what you've kind of come up with in your diligence, as well as what the proposal has in it.
Yes, I kind of stated that before in the first new proposal item that CEA has. I will certainly bring that to the team for a presentation on next Thursday. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for that. The next one was the addition of staff reduction in force for ESPs. We're still taking a look at that. Simply the same, the same question that I had before was just, and I know that Mr. Bishop had brought it up previously, is, maybe putting some more weight on years of experience versus education level. Just because, every position is a little bit different. And when we're talking about staff reduction in force for ESPs, we're not looking across the board at all ESPs. And I don't think that was what you were saying with the proposal. But, we would be looking at bus drivers and instructional assistants and monitors and custodians all in a bit of a different way. So I'm still working through some language to be able to propose maybe some changes to that kind of, it gives some more, it's not so cut and dry. And I don't think that's what you were going for. I just want to be able to kind of make sure that it's as functional as possible before both sides, say yes to it. So I'm working through that. I don't know if anyone had any questions or comments on that one. It does not look like it. So same thing with the certified reduction in force, still working through that, looking at it. Luckily we're not in that position because of some additional items that have come our way. But I will do the same thing and kind of just massage the language there to make sure that it fits, overall, because I don't think any of us want to create an umbrella type policy that doesn't take into account different factors. And I know that's not where you were going with that. So I just want to make sure that it matches with what will help us if we ever do find ourselves in that situation. The salary language for auxiliary, we are still looking at that along with the ESP pay. Same with the psychologist salary schedule, and again, the related service step salary schedule. So we are still reviewing those, and making sure that it is affordable and that we can actually make it happen, and also that it's equitable to really all employees, and make sure that we're making the most prudent financial decisions we can. So those are still pending. The next one, go ahead, Giovanna.
So I really appreciate all of the considerations that you have. I just guess want to clarify. Are you also making sure that these changes are sustainable over the long run?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. But we do not want to put ourselves in a position where we can do these things now, but we can't do them later, because we certainly don't want to get into having to use the reduction in force policy because we made a decision to, change step schedules. And Victoria, did you have a comment or question?
Yes, I do. Administration right now is looking at strategies to recruit students back to our district. So if we can, all of this is obviously contingent on our increased enrollment. I know one thing that's already done, a done deal, is the creation of the AOI school. So that's, for families that really do want to stick with online education, there'll be an option for them in district. But of course, there's no protection, there's no real protection, no way to protect or mitigate for drops, significant decreases in enrollment. So everything that we're doing is always going to be contingent on our enrollment. And that's just the nature of how we're funded in the state of Arizona. So while the intention is obviously to make sure everything is sustainable, it is all based on student enrollment and doing what we can to bring kids back.
Thank you, Victoria. And yes, and I think one of the things that or one of the reasons why Mr. Stratman is here is just to talk to us a little bit about, if we make a decision through meet and confer, but then later on it's determined to not follow the law or the statute or those types of things, we, that it can't stay as just because it went through Meet and Confer, whether it was a district proposal or a CEA proposal, it doesn't mean we can do it anymore. And I say that going into the 10-month work calendar proposal, because I did speak with legal counsel about that, and we can certainly do that as proposed and pay individuals, for those breaks. However, sometimes any position, a teacher, administrator, ESP, may need to come in on a paid day off because of whatever reason, either emergency or something the district has determined that needs to get completed, as we all probably experienced with the executive order. And that would not be a time and a half paid situation. So I did want to add that information, and I will update the proposal to make sure that's there. And I just wanted to see if either Mr. Stratman or Michelle, anyone from your team, had any comments about that particular proposal.
Sorry, I know that that was going to be on our list of questions about the coming in during holidays, but as it was stated at an earlier meeting, when most of, I believe it was said that most of the, is it BNO work gets done during the holidays? So, or during our break. So if most of the work gets done, I'm assuming they'd still be required to do that work at that time. And not.
Yes. However, I believe, and I could be completely wrong, the individuals that we were talking about as far as that do the majority of that work are 12-month employees. So we're talking about because there's already a 10-month work calendar, right, that has those paid days. So we're talking about essentially eliminating the 9-month non-benefited, which refers to the insurance because they're part-time, and the 9-month benefited calendar, and putting those individuals on the 10-month. So the work that they would be asked to do again would be, I mean, I can't say doesn't exist, because it will, but it's not, like a scheduled kind of thing. And we could certainly go through like a rotation, or, departments could decide, all right, Tom is going to do the, carpet cleaning on Monday, and Victoria is going to do it on Tuesday. So it's not, a burden on one person to get some of those projects done. It won't be, I don't know the best term for it, but it's not like there's not going to be a plan to say, okay, we have them paid, so we're going to bring them in every single day. Like that's not the point. The point is to provide those days as paid days to make it more equitable, and also to get us within, and Victoria can correct me if I'm wrong, we were looking at annualizing the pay for ESPs, but this actually gets us where there's no pay period breaks because of the work calendar. There's always at least a partial paycheck for the entire 12 months for a 10-month person based on the 2-week in arrears payment.
That is correct. Thank you, Tom. They do go hand in hand. The problem, and I'm just going to be, honest and frank, based on the pandemic and what we had to do over spring break, I can already tell you there was a lot of pushback for some, and I'm not going to name names, but some staff that received spring break as paid, and we needed them to come in. I mean, we need to get the schools ready for scholars to return on the 15th, and there's nobody here to help. How do we get staff on here to help? Obviously, for the certified, that was pretty straightforward, because certified are not paid. Those days are not included in their days paid, correct? So they're annualized anyway, they're not paid, so you pay them on a time card. That's really simple. For those that needed to come in, that we really needed to come in, but they aren't paid during the breaks, well, how are you going to make it worth my while? Well, that's a problem. That's a real problem. So now we're facing, we need ESPs to come in because we have we have pretty much an emergency situation, and our kids need them, and they're not willing to come in. That just makes everybody look bad. So there's got to be and this is not a meet and confer problem, and it's not a CEA problem. It's a management problem when we're having trouble getting people to do what we need them to do on behalf of our kids. So that's when it becomes challenging. It's okay, and it's certainly okay to give additional benefits, but the scholars have to be the ones that win. When you give, I'm not here because I want a paycheck. I'm here because I'm doing something for the district, my services to the kids. And we've got to make sure that in all of our roles, everyone from admin to classified, certified, everybody understands that why we're here. We are here for the kids. I wasn't asking, and we were not asking for anyone to come in and work for free. We weren't asking, we're saying, okay, if you're coming in and already being paid during that time, we will of course give you that time back. We're not trying to take it from you. We're not trying to harm you. But then in many cases, the answer was still no, we don't want to commit. So I'm just making that very, very clear that this can potentially be a challenge if managers don't manage it and coach the staff well on what the scholars need. So I think, moving the 10-month calendar, that makes all the sense in the world, because just because the kids aren't here does not mean that there's not still that work that needs to be done on that Friday or the week after or the week before school comes in. There's always work that needs to be done. And now we have a mechanism to get that work done. So getting rid of the 9-month calendar is a beautiful thing. It's just that as managers, we need to make sure that when we need staff, that we've got staff that are willing to come in. That's all I want to make sure that I say.
Thank you, Victoria. And I think that's where everyone's coming from. I don't think we're trying to, we're just trying to make sure that the proposal and I'll update it so it's, because as we get to, I guess, decision Thursday, I guess we can call it that. It seems like something Michelle would label a day, and it is also April Fool's Day. So I have to assure people that we're not joking with some of these things. But I think one of the things I appreciate most about our two teams, and going back to last year, is just the patience and diligence that we put into making decisions. We're not just saying yes because it's easy. We're not saying no because it's easy. We're really just looking, we're really looking at it. And this, again, this was our proposal. So this is something that we want to do. I shared it as part of our governing board meet and confer update last Thursday. So, we want to make it work. We just also have to have some language there to make people understand, like, hey, if something happens or we need something done because the kids need it the Monday after spring break, we're going to have to ask some people to come in. That's really just the crux of it. So we're not, again, it's not like, hey, we're going to put this calendar in place and then make everyone work automatically. So I just kind of wanted to state that again. So thank you all for your input on that one. The next two, we have the change to the longevity program, which is really a payment issue tied to if someone has a 30% increase in any of their 3 of their last 5 years. And I know that I've clarified it a couple of times, but I am not an attorney. So I would like to ask Jeff to kind of talk a little bit about, some options there that we've talked about. But how do we navigate this from a legal perspective to still give the 29%? Right now, we're offering it in the 2 lump sums in the same year, but if then someone retires, and they've gotten an increase, either it was just cost of, it's only 1%. So once they hit that 30% increase in 1 year, that's where we received that $50,000 fine because the individual retired in that year. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you to kind of to give some feedback there. Thank you.
Yeah, and I apologize. Once I do this, I've got to step into another meeting. So my apologies for that. If there's something else, so I'm glad to be available via, an email loop or whatever, to help out. But the issue here with the longevity thing, and I'll apologize first, I haven't cleaned this up to the point where I haven't helped clean this up with Tom and actually some communication with ASRS as to what the detailed options are or need to be. Tom and I, a few months ago, had some discussions with folks at ASRS to kick around ideas as to how to fix this and still be legally compliant. This is one of those things, like Tom mentioned on the last item, that it was a great idea. It was a good incentive. The statute changes and now you're out of compliance, and the district is incurring liability expense in addition to something they never expected to have. So it's not a good thing when you get hit with an extra bill after an audit from ASRS. In a sense, what the problem is, there's a statutory provision that says when you exceed 30% increase in those last years before retirement, and it goes into your retirement pension benefit calculation. If that's greater than 30%, the district has to pay that liability actuarially over that retiree's anticipated life expectancy. So what the problem is, when you have step movement and when you have raises, like what we've had with the teacher raises in the by 2020 and all that stuff, you give a 30% incentive, and in the last couple years that go into that individual's retirement calculation, they've gotten step movement of maybe 2.5% of an increase. They've perhaps gotten a raise of maybe 2, 3, 4%, in the past few years, 5% even. Now you're over that 30% threshold and creating a liability on the district budget that nobody anticipated. So really some ideas on how to correct this. My advice really is you've got to eventually get to phasing this out or down, so that you're safe on that 30% threshold. I realize you have people that are right on, they're expecting this benefit this year or next year or whatever, but to try to come up with a creative phasing out of the entire 29% amount. And really that's the way to do it. We've talked with ASRS about, are there ways that we can not assign this compensation into the ASRS pension benefit calculation so that it doesn't count kind of towards that 30% threshold. But because of the way compensation is defined and the way you're paying it, it has to be included in that. So hands are tied a little bit, and it really falls into, like Tom expressed in that last item. Great idea, was a good benefit, incentive for longevity, but it now is running the district into problems because of how ASRS is interpreting the statute and holding the district liable.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate the time. And so we'll continue to work on that as trying to come up with a creative solution. Again, the goal is not to get rid of it at this point. What we're trying to do is find a way that we can honor what we have, but at the same time, not run astray from the statute and from the ASRS rules, because I would assume that everyone in this meeting agrees that we don't want to pay an additional $50,000 per retiree as a penalty. So Jeff, I appreciate the time. I know you have to run. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch as we move forward in this collaborative process.
Thank you all for having me, and hopefully it was a bit helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Michelle, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just have one. Just to clarify, is the district fined over a 3-year period average, or is it like 30% in 1 year?
So that's a good question. So it's 30% in 1 year within the last 5 years. So when someone retires from ASRS, they're compensated via their pension based on the highest 3 of their last 5 years. So if somebody receives in those 5 years 30% in 1 year, they would be, we would be penalized for that. So the one option and then we briefly discussed it before, would just to say, once you get the 29%, you get it just like we always did, but then you're frozen in pay. Your pay never changed. So if your pay doesn't change and you only got 29% that 1 year, there's no issue. Now, and that's kind of where Jeff was going with the phase out, right? So we're going to have people that they're frozen. I mean, they're still able to work and get paid. Our salary schedules are pretty solid, especially at that level of experience. So they would still earn the same money, but they would have to be frozen, and there would be no increase. Now, if we did that, there would be no issue, other than the cost of the program. But I mean, the fine would not apply if they were continually at 29%, just for that, that 1 year, and then it would go from there. They would, when I say go from there, they would just be on the same pay. Like if their salary was 55,000 and they received 29% of that 1 year, and then it was 55,000 for the next 5 years, and then they retired, there wouldn't be a penalty. But the issue also with that is, and I see Victoria threw a video on, so she may be already thinking of this, is they would be on like their own salary schedule at that point, because if we made a change, so if we add things to the teacher salary schedule and increase those numbers on the columns and rows, that teacher would have to then be converted to his or her own, well, any employee, actually, it's ESP administrators as well, but it's a percentage. So it doesn't matter if someone's making, the max or the minimum, it's a percentage. So that person would then end up on their own schedule because they retire at a certain amount, or they get the longevity at a certain amount. So every year, if we have 25 people eligible, we're adding 25 salary schedules. So that's where it gets a little tricky, especially with contracts and things. But it is a solution that I'm sure we can make work. But that's kind of I guess that's the easiest thing. But again, it's like a mediation. No one's going to leave happy, right? In these types of things when we change programs, and we have to. So we have to do something. I don't know, Victoria, if you wanted to add something in there.
Maybe this is premature, but just kind of thinking that through, because right now we pay anybody that's maxed out on the schedule, we pay a cost of living amount. So that would not apply to these teachers, to these staff. So that cost of living allowance goes bye-bye. As well as any benefit or additional pay out of Prop 208 that'd be gone too for these staff. So what I'm hearing, so it's just, that means just we have a lot of work to do as a team. Basically, what I'm getting down to. I'm just thinking of those things off the top of my head, because if we don't do something with the 29%, if we don't do something with the percentage itself, then our hands are really tied. So we have flexibility with the percentage, and then still being able to give some of those other items. So that's a give and take. And like Tom said, that's not going to make anybody happy. Thank you, Tom. I'll turn my camera on.
So just an additional follow-up. Is part of the issue the fact that the 29% is given all at one time, and a possible solution could be like giving half this year, half next year type of thing? I don't know if that makes sense.
It actually does make sense. And that would be something that we could do. The problem is it's very, very gray area to say, okay, we're going to do it. I mean, we're just spacing it out into different years, because what ends up happening then is you're also putting that, and this is just a concern that I've heard from teachers. It's not something that limits us in doing it, and there's no penalty for it. But then they're having an increase in 2 tax years. So they can't and it's already like that because one's in December and one's at the end of the school year. That's actually, I mean, I'll have to look into that idea because that's not a bad one. I think that might work, because if we did 14.5% in the, after they finish 25 years, 14.5% in December. And then if they do the next year, right, then they would get it again at 14.5%. The issue, we would just have to change the language to say that essentially to get the 25-year longevity payment, you actually have to work 27 years, right? Because you get the first payment in your 26th and then the second payment in your 27th. And I think, and I will run that by Jeff, but I think that actually would also work. I just, again, no one's going to be perfectly happy with whatever we do. We have to make a change because of the law. We don't have a choice. But that would satisfy both the statute, the 5 years, and the being able to keep the percentage the same. So that's something. If you wouldn't mind, Miss or Michelle, I'm just calling my first name, typing that as a note on that document in the folder, that'd be outstanding, because I think that might be something to look at. And it's not, and again, we're going to be changing the program one way or the other. So, and typically if people are in their 26th year, they're going to work their 27th, simply because they're trying to get to that multiplier from ASRS at 30 years. So, and if somebody leaves, they leave. That's a decision they're making, right? So that would have to be in there as well. But if you could add that, that would be outstanding. Thank you for the input.
I sure can, absolutely. Thank you.
So the next one is kind of similar as far as, the medical insurance. Obviously, we're looking at this, and the reason, again, we're not trying to get rid of it. What we're trying to do is just make it more equitable, since when it was developed, insurance cost a certain amount, and now insurance costs more than double that. So we have to increase the days. So I don't know if there was, I mean, again, I know this is something that Michelle and your team are looking at and discussing, and I understand that it's kind of a lengthy thought process, as all of these things are, of course, right? So I didn't know if I see you threw your video on, so you probably have a question, so go ahead.
A question? Ha. I talk fast though, so buckle in. So that we understand this, and I say we, are we covering just the individual, or is this the family? Just so when we're talking about this.
Oh,
Work
we're
for
talking,
insurance is just the employee.
yeah, just the employee.
If we can get kind of an idea, and obviously we can wait as well, but how much is insurance going up every year, and how will it affect the required days for admin certified and ESPs? Potentially ESP, because if the insurance is increased up to like 14,000, then our ESP is looking at working 88 days due to the increases. Are we correct in our math?
That you're correct with the math. I don't think that what I was proposing is not to continually change it every single year. Was just to increase it to get it closer. One thing in conversation that could be considered is, going from if someone had to do 25 days, now they have to do 40. So it's not like totally like double, triple of that. And then, same kind of thing, like the, 40, 35, 30, something like that. instead of the 2514 kind of thing. What we're trying to do, I mean, the purpose of this is again to I don't know of another district, and I have called around and I was talking with Mr. Stratman about any other districts that have a longevity program and a work for insurance program, and he is not aware of any. Now there was another one and it went away, so we're not talking about getting rid of it. We're just trying to get it, keep it in a manner that we can still, do something for individuals that serve that much time in our district. And it's, that's the challenge, right? Because we talked earlier about, are things sustainable? Currently, having both of them the way they are, well, obviously one has a statutory penalty. And so this fiscally they're not sustainable in tandem. It just isn't. So that's kind of where we're going with that. I wouldn't see it, and I would agree that the 88 days, that's that's up there. So I don't think we would ever get to that point. And we just brought it as a point of brainstorming solutions because we know how collaborative we are as teams, and just trying to say, okay, what can we afford? What can we sustain? What can we do? How do we change this? So my plan is to kind of put those other options in there for next Thursday to look at, well, maybe we can do this instead of, and you're right. I mean, I think it's also hard because, one ESP doesn't make the same as another ESP. Another administrator doesn't make the same as another administrator when they retire. So then again, it gets into the situation as I look more into like even my own idea, I guess, is then you're creating all these different all these different amounts. So then we're okay, well, this person that retired has to do 42 days, this person has to do 68, and it's not even, and they could be both teachers. So then we're tracking, instead of 3 categories, we're tracking 38 categories. So can it be done? Yes. Will it be great for consistency? Probably not. So, we're actually still working on our own counter proposal to our proposal, if that makes sense.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
So
Then I might jump around a little on these questions, just
sure, no problem.
kind of a quick education. What is and is there a cost of comparable insurance to ASRS or somewhere else that is more affordable, but doesn't lessen the coverage? So could one plan be offered so that person could choose a lesser plan that divides better for the retiree? Like a choice? Is that
Well, there is insurance through ASRS, like insurance to what Cartwright offers. No.
okay?
And Victoria may have a more exact number on this, but the last I checked, ASRS is about $13,000 a year for their insurance plan. I think it's like 1042 or something along those lines. And that's even, I believe, like a high deductible style plan. And I could be wrong, but
Yeah,
that's,
I think you're correct.
so, that's not the, I could call it, the copay plan we have now that we're able to offer, which is about, I think I said it was $10,680. So that's, it's a significant difference, and it's higher. So it would be even more days if we did it proportionally.
And I know that we're still in discussion, and when it gets down to, what are we calling it next Thursday, D-Day?
Decision Thursday.
Does this affect teachers that have already retired and are working their days right now, or is this future retirees?
This would be for everyone.
So if someone is currently working their 25 days, those days would potentially change?
For next school year, yes. Not for this year.
No, okay. Sorry, looking through my questions. Is there, between our meetings, is there Can we get like the district's cost of paying, I'll make sure I understand my own question. The district, can we get the district's cost of paying our company for substitute for 25 days coverage? Like, do we have a number?
Yeah, I can get that to you, absolutely.
Okay.
If you
Okay,
could,
he doesn't
if
hit
you
you with
would-
a lot of questions, so I want to make sure.
yeah, no problem. If you wouldn't mind just sending me an email with your specific question, then I can answer. I'll let you know.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to pause right there. Thank you. That was.
All right, thank you. The next one that's still pending was the teacher lunchtime moving to 35 minutes. So there's not really anything to add to that. So we can talk about that, or, you know, make a decision on that next week. And obviously that's just to provide for the, you know, special area teachers and elective teachers and everything kind of to fit into the schedule of the day a little bit better, but we can address that. And the last one that we had talked about, I believe, and I don't want to misquote you, Michela, but it was, we're not going to entertain this at this time. So I just wanted, if you're okay with it, an opportunity for Mr. Newman to kind of talk through some things that he's noticed as a principal, and just kind of, you know, look at the teacher prep time thing from his perspective, if you're okay with that.
Of course.
All right, so I will turn it over to Mr. Newman, and he will, there is a document in the folder. I believe it's aptly named Teacher Prep Time. So I think he'll go through that. And thank you, Casey, for being here.
No, thank you guys for allowing me to kind of clear this up. Tom, going back real quick to the 29%, 25-year deal. I have a teacher who's going into it next year. My understanding, so after the way it's written right now, they get the 25 years, get the 29%, and then you have the two options to retire at that point, kind of severance, I think it says, and or to work another 3 years, right?
Yeah, and it would actually end up being another 5 years, because you'd have to get outside of that highest 3 in your last 5 window. So that was an error on my part.
And then if you go and you do work your 31st year, would you then start getting a raise again? If you got the money?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah. Mhm.
that was just a clarifying question.
If you now, so if I get, that's a good question. So if you severed your employment and then came back with like an ESI type program, you would then be, you'd be paid based on that program. And then if you came back again, because you can't retire anymore, right? So like you only retire once, so then you can continue to do that, get increases as decided by the board. Yes, sir.
All right, thanks, Tom. So just after our last meeting, kind of talked to my staff about it, tell them they could go back and watch and help me with my teacher clarity. So what I did was I put together on the left side, if you look at the document, what this year's third quarter that we just completed looked like based on our Fridays, and then what our proposal would look like next year. So if we just start at the bottom, actually, it shows you on the left side, we only had 2 total days as a staff with our certified staff on Fridays, because the other blended days, quarterly planning, teacher prep days, teacher work days. So we had a total of 2 and a total of 20.5 hours of teacher prep throughout the third quarter. So if we go back to the top, the first one was just, it would be the exact same. So nothing changes, because, and you see the 4 hours of site-based, and I think this is where I kind of messed up Michela, where she was talking about possibly going to 5:30. On these days that we already have, those 1.5 hours of site-based prep, collaboration, planning are already in there. So nothing changed on 1/8. Then when you go down to our district PD days, the schools would at least have an hour and a half up to an hour and a half. And again, as site administrators, there's times I have a 30-minute meeting and that hour and a half now turns into an hour a prep or collaboration for our grade levels or just for prep. Where on our site PD days, now that we all go and we have 6.5 hours of online classes and our 1.5 hour lunch, now goes down to 5 hours. So that's the change on those type of days. On our blended days, those are the days we don't have our MAP, our ISS, RTIB, MOA, resource counselor, psychologist, they're all off campus. So what we would like to do is at least have an hour and a half, the opportunity to meet as a staff on those days. Then everything falls in line as it did. Those different support staff, they go off to their meetings and everyone else continues with their what we would call the 4-hour site-based, 2.5 hours of prep and 1 hour lunch. And then when you get down to 129, where you have the teacher work days for 6.5 hours, and on those days, there's no scheduled collaboration or planning. All we would ask for is up to, again, 1.5 hours. And now the teacher work day goes down to 5 hours. And that happens twice every quarter. So you're just losing that hour and a half. Again, site-based, so your administrator could use up to the hour and a half, or after a 30-minute, hey, we really need to touch base. Because what I can tell you during the second quarter, which I haven't done in 2 years, was I've had to call a quick meeting on a Tuesday afternoon or a Wednesday afternoon, where in the past it would just wait till Thursday. But knowing I only had my whole staff together twice in the third quarter, we had to do that 2 times. And I'd really just not wait, knowing that, hey, let's start our Friday off with that. So again, as you see, the district PD, again, just taking off an hour and a half from the district PD, nothing with teacher prep time on those days. As you get to 212, 212 is again like our nothing changes. And teacher prep day, again, just taking the hour and a half. Conferences was all the same. So what it turns out is next year, if this proposal would be agreed upon, every single week we'd at least have some time together as a whole certified staff. And then, as you can see, it took away from your teacher work days. It only took away 3 hours. But again, based on your site-based administration, it could possibly add another 7.5 hours of actual prep, planning, or collaboration time.
Thank you, Casey. It looks like Ms. Giosa may have a question or comment.
Yeah, so I just want to say I really appreciate the work that you put into making this visual. Sometimes that definitely helps, you know, like we deal with students, so sometimes visual is more helpful. So this does put into perspective kind of what you meant. I think the way that the proposal is written doesn't really reflect what you're showing here. So I would ask that if you could revise that so it speaks the same language that you're saying right now as you're explaining this to us. The other thing is that I love that your campus put this much effort into it. I'm wondering how many other campuses are experiencing the same issue? Because remember, we're talking about things that will happen across the district. So if we're saying that one site is having these issues, you know, we can recognize and appreciate that, but then we need to problem solve a little bit differently.
Giovanna, in regards to issues, and yes, I can definitely reword the proposal. I don't even know what I just said, but I'll figure out how to put it in words. I'm more of a visual like you. But issues, can you explain what that in regards to this proposal?
Well, it sounds like there might be like concerns on how the time is used on each campus. So it sounds like that is creating kind of barriers for you to meet with your teams, your teachers to meet together, and different other organizational type things, right, to keep everything running. So it sounds like one of the things is maybe finding out, well, exactly what is causing these issues. You know, maybe it's not necessarily all the prep time or the lunch time. So then, you know, what is it and where is the complication? But that would be helpful to know if all campuses across the district are also experiencing that same thing, because then that's problematic. Then we're not being as a good service to our students, and we're not being a good service to our families, and we're not serving ourselves well as professionals. So I guess in your exploration with your staff, did they come up with other reasons as to why these issues are being experienced, where there's lack of time or too much time?
Oh, no, there's no issues with my staff. My staff was how to clarify this for you guys to understand that they actually want to spend more time with their team and on campus to implement the initiatives that Pena has in place. So yeah, is no issues. They want that planning time here instead of maybe going to so much regional PD that is more of a broad spectrum of what we want to actually implement here. So I'm sorry if you thought there was issues. They were helping me to clarify for you guys to see that it's a benefit for your sites.
Right.
And Giovanna, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I see that Jane has her video on also, so I'm going to let her ask a question, and then we'll go back if you have further clarification needed.
Thanks, Tom. Casey, I also appreciate all the work that you put into that and your staff. And I just want, as someone who is at all the different schools on different days, and I meet with administrators across the district, I do feel that having more collaborative time and more time with the staff as a whole, I think is something that is wanted at most of the schools. So I just kind of wanted to reiterate what Casey said and kind of just support that, you said, is this something that's going on at all the other schools? And I do think that in some cases that there's a lot of schools where administration would like to see their staff more. And I think one of the questions I heard you say was that, where is the problem coming from? Is it a time issue? And I think that the time is there, but I think one of the things that they would like to see it come from is that work day. And just like Casey said, it may be just like an hour where we can take it for the staff to meet together as a group or collaborative time.
Hi, just to clarify a question about something Mr. Newman had stated about MAPS teachers meeting. I've talked with a few MAPS teachers, and there's only a handful that are meeting, and it's not every blended Friday. So is this a continuous issue that's happening, like with groups of teachers meeting, or they're not getting enough time to meet?
So as you see listed on 122, that's what blended Fridays are. So MAP teachers go with music, we have the music lead as our campus. So she has the 8:30 to 11:30 on blended days. Music, art, and PE all go. ISSs go with ed services, RTIBs go and counselors with Kyle and Rebecca's department. So on blended days, those people do not show up. So it's a skeleton of certified staff K6 here at the elementary level.
Okay, thank you. I had seen Michela's video come on. I think my audio went out, so I missed part of what you had stated. Thank you.
Do you need me to, Michelle, I can restate it. It wasn't that long. Do you want me to go again?
No, that's okay. Carry on. I think everybody else caught it, so they can fill me in.
So I just want to reiterate, because I also too appreciate the work that has gone into this, and in speaking with your staff, we've also gotten a chance to speak with staff at different campuses, and I do want to reiterate, one, this schedule was voted on at last meet and confer, and I know that the team and district, everyone worked pretty hard to put this together, to recognize time and to recognize time. So if I am speaking on what I think Shelley was trying to say about MAPS, if you look at the current schedule for our whole year for our Fridays, MAPS are only taking up 4 of those days. And I think, as I shared last time, we haven't had a full year with this schedule. And the amount of time that we are supposed to be in district PDs, we are over that this year. District PDs are supposed to be a certain amount, teacher work days are supposed to be a certain amount, and then our blended days a certain amount as well. So right now, we're not following the policy. We're not giving it a chance for us to create those schedules with our campuses. And I think that's what I truly believe that's what our first step needs to be, is to get on board on following that policy so that we can have the time with our staff and to do the bonding, to do the department meetings, to do the team meetings. But we have to give it time first. We have yet to finish it this year, this pandemic year, and we have yet to follow the policy as written.
And thank you, Michelle and Casey as well. I think that, you know, just the collaborative nature of our meet and confer process as we developed that last year and going into this year, I think it's where Mr. Newman is coming from is from an information standpoint, from what he's seeing, experiencing, hearing. Obviously, everyone in this meeting has a different experience about, you know, district PD and the things that we learn and go through and collaborate on throughout the year. So I don't believe, you know, the purpose of Casey's presentation is to, you know, necessarily change it or you know, make something different, because I would agree. I think a lot of things have been so different because of the pandemic. We couldn't imagine half of them, you know, as we're trying to plan through things. So I think it was, and Casey, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was information standpoint, sharing of information from his perspective as a principal, with feedback from his teachers. And yes, there are people that agree, as Jane shared, across the district. But I do think we're just working through it together. And the reason that I had him share it again was just so the information was out there and we could all kind of let it soak in and think about it, and go from there. So that was really the purpose, Michelle. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. And then with Casey in that burgundy shirt with all those leather bound books behind him, I can't help but think about Anchorman. And there's absolutely no way that he read all of those books. So I wanted to add that as well.
I would like to agree and say yes. I completely understand and I hear you, because if anything that I think that everyone needs right now, administrators, staff, everyone, we need time. So thank you for sharing.
Yes, absolutely. And I, again, I think I've said this probably too many times today, but maybe I can't say it enough. Just the appreciation for the collaborative nature of these meetings. And we're all doing our best for not only the employees of the district, but, you know, all of our discussions, if you've all noticed, also have a focus on our scholars, which is really our purpose, as Ms. Farrar mentioned earlier. And I think we're all on that same page. So I just wanted to appreciate that, and then move us along. We don't have any action items. Future agenda items, we already know what those are with the new proposals presented this evening and the pending. The next scheduled meeting will be on Thursday, April 1st at 4 p.m. via Zoom. As Ms. Stevens labeled it, D-Day. So I'm hoping to see her in a tank and an Army helmet and see what happens. And then I will go ahead and make a motion to adjourn our meet and confer meeting this evening at 5:36.
I second.
Is there anyone that would like to stay longer? All right, not hearing any discussion about that particular topic. I thank you all. The meeting is adjourned and we will See you next Thursday at 4 p.m. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.